Good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Empowered Pause. I am your host, Rachel Chinowa J. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before we get started this evening, just a little information about Speak Initiative. As always, I would like everyone to know about the great things that Speak Initiative stands for and what we're doing to combat the stigma around mental health care and around suicide. So, Speak Initiative is a nonprofit that actually stands for Suicide Prevention through Empowerment, Action, and Kindness. And through these three philosophies is where we intend to cancel the rise in suicide in our communities and reduce the stigma around mental health care. Okay, the Empowered Pause is one of our programs that falls under our empowerment philosophy, where we're here each week, Wednesday evenings, and we just offer space where our speakers and our listeners can be heard, where you can receive some empowering words of advice or some thoughts that may bring some kind of peace or insight to you, maybe something that's jarring your spirit that it may cause you to think a little bit more about the situation that you may be in or someone else that you care about may be in, right? So today I'd like to talk a little bit about vulnerability, the the state of being vulnerable, right? Now, a lot of people think vulnerability happens to be a weakness, as if, you shouldn't be vulnerable to certain things. However, vulnerability to me is a form of courage, right? There's a power behind being vulnerable. The true definition of vulnerability says that it's the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now, that sounds scary. It sounds like, you're setting yourself up for failure or putting yourself in a situation where you may not be protected, right? But what if we change the way we think about being vulnerable? What if we had to be vulnerable in order to heal? I'm always coming back to healing, right? But what if we really had to strip away some things and let down our guard in order to receive the help that some of us may need? I know in my life, there have been many places and spaces where I didn't feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable or transparent, where I had to keep on the mask that so many of us wear on a daily basis to perform or to just get through to the next day or to the next moment. It is in those moments that I found myself struggling the most. It is in those moments that I wish I would have been able to ask for help and allow the people who cared about me, excuse me, the people who cared about me to see who I truly was in those moments, right? Um, I also I'm sorry to pause, but this is something that's coming deeply from my heart. So it's nothing ever rehearsed or written. I just have a couple of points that I actually may pick out to talk about, but usually I'm speaking from my heart. So I always want this empowered pause to be very transparent and very real because we are in real times. I want us on a Wednesday evening to be able to stop and just recalculate our week, recalibrate, breathe in and breathe out. So, as I'm talking about this aspect of being vulnerable, it takes me back to a time where I probably needed to be, but was afraid to be. I did not have the courage at that time to ask for help. I thought that I had to hide who I really was in those moments and hide the pain and the confusion and just the lack of hope and and the desperation that I was feeling in those moments. I don't want someone to be so courageous that they cannot ask for help and they're suffering in silence because they don't want to be a burden to someone else. When you're a friend or a family member or you're loved, you can never be a burden. That's something I had to learn by real time experience with the people who actually care for me. It was something that I didn't have on an organic level that my chosen family, my friends, my family, and my family taught me. Learning how to be vulnerable allowed me to get the help that I needed. It allowed me to find my tribe, so to speak, because I wasn't allowing myself to need anything because I did not want to be vulnerable in any situation, right? So, the whole point of this brief conversation is to allow your friends to be there for you, allow the resources that are there, the people who care, the ones who support you, the spaces that affirm who you are, allow them to be there for you when you are having any type of crisis, any type of challenging time, even if you just need to be heard. There are spaces and places for that. And if you don't know of any, Speak Initiative is one, right? I don't want to have situations where people are dying literally because they were not able to be vulnerable to the people who are around them to receive them, right? There's a quote from Brene Brown that I'd like to share about vulnerability. It says vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is our greatest measure of courage. The greatest measure of courage. I received that. It takes a lot to sit down and face yourself sometimes and just be vulnerable with yourself. So imagine doing that with people who you love and who will support you, but it may not be comfortable. These conversations are never really comfortable, right? These are hard conversations that we're having. We're talking about sometimes we're not happy, or sometimes we're stressed out, sometimes you're overwhelmed, maybe you're having symptoms of a diagnosis, maybe your family life is not going well, but that's okay. We still are able to stand in the space where we are and say, you know what, I am still here. I survived the day. I am going to be okay, even if I am not okay right now. Believe that there's support for you. There's somebody who can stand in the gap and say, even if you're not fine, let me support you until you are fine. So that's what Speak Initiative is about. Vulnerability just popped in my, excuse me, was placed in my heart a few days ago. And it just caused me to look at myself even deeper. I do that all the time, but even in a different way, excuse me, to acknowledge that it's something that was not comfortable, but it was something that was necessary in order to heal and to continue the healing journey. Because I don't think there's an end point to that. I think it's just you move through and you get to one level and then hopefully you master it or get as successful as you can at that level so you can move to the next level. I don't think there's an end in our journeys. I think it just keeps moving through. So thank you for taking the time today. I went a little longer than I usually do, but I hope the word was beneficial to you. And if you're not in a space where you feel that you can be vulnerable and you are having some challenges, feel free to reach out to us at Speak Initiative. Our website is www.speakinitiativesuicideprevention.org. You can find us on all social media platforms. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then,